Clayface had a small boat waiting for us offshore, and whether he chartered it or owned it himself, we couldn't tell. Clayface pulled up anchor and we were away. When we were deeper into the open sea, he got into the details. 10 is back and they set up on an oil rig in the Gulf. I have it on good authority, this is their last-ditch effort. If they don't do or die here, they'll never get the money they need to start again. So, people, this is it. They're fucking done after this, said Clayface. And what is our opposition looking like? Carl asked as we all began doing weapons checks. Unclear, but we have to assume they're better than before if they've been at it for 8 years, said Clayface. And how did you come by this information? I asked. We all had our eyes out if 10 resurfaced. We all made a pact that if any of us caught wind they were trying it again, whoever was left would destroy them for good. I just got lucky when I was asking around, said Clayface. We all nodded, knowing that was sometimes how things worked out. Looking at Hero and Carl, I was confident that their skills were still sharp. I wasn't so sure about Clayface, Kizzy, or myself for that matter. Hero and Carl were mercs even back then, so doing things like this was their life. Clay, Kizzy, and me were enlisted, so our skills had an expiration date, and from the looks of us, that date may have been far past due. After we navigated through the maze-like bunker for a little while, we realized that all of it wasn't man-made. Some of it integrated into natural stone deposits, which made the place stretch further than it seemed it should. We approached another man-made section of the bunker that had support beams holding it up, and we became more cautious, looking for traps or more of those rogue soldiers. There were bloody handprints on the wall and clear signs of battle. Our feet crunched on gravel and shells. We could smell the faint scent of gunpowder. Keep it tight, people, said North, even though I don't think he had to remind us at that moment. We followed as much of the carnage as we could, and there we found a lab. I honestly couldn't believe we were actually seeing this. My mind instantly began racing back to movies and video games. When I saw this place, that was the moment that everything changed for me. It was the moment I couldn't assume that all the wild things that weirdos used to make a fuss about weren't real. I had to believe because it was in my face. The lab itself was massive. There were chemical vats churning, broken glass tanks, which put you in the mindset of any movie with a mad scientist in it, computers, and science shit I didn't understand. There were tanks all along the wall, some broken, some not, and some had the remnants of human remains in it. One dead soldier was struck down holding an unspent RPG in a death grip. Computers were all around, but most were password locked. Hero lit a cigarette and plopped down at a computer. I assumed he was going to hack it, but he flipped over the keyboard and found a password written in typing paper taped to the back of it. North began ordering us to strategic positions to secure the room, because even someone as slow as I could see that there had to have been some sort of struggle. Maybe the test subjects broke loose, because there were a handful of dismembered dudes in lab coats to back up this claim. Sarge put me and Kizzy at the front door and Luke and the Canadian Jacob on the steel door that was big enough to drive a vehicle through on the other end. Sergeant Winston positioned himself in the dead center of the room, with Hero and Carl, who were roaming about attempting to piece together clues. In 2 minutes, which felt like 20, Hero flicked his cigarette to the floor and whistled for North to come over. North waved me over as well. Clay was more of the tech guy and the demolitions guy than me, but when he wasn't available, I was the second best choice. I mentioned to them that I edited my extreme sports videos when I was a kid, and suddenly I became the go-to guy whenever a computer came up. "What are they saying here, Disco?" North asked. I basically just read out loud the information that Hero pulled up. The company named 10, or the Temporal Evolving Network, found a way to reanimate the dead. They realized that it didn't quite work like it did in zombie movies, though. The brain was hardwired into the last memories it had in life, so when they reanimated soldiers who had died violently, they, for the most part, stayed in that state of hyperaggression. Since they were testing on soldiers who had died violently, violent subjects were all they got. I shudder to think what it'd look like if they reanimated someone who had a heart attack during sex.
So, they were looking to weaponize soldiers?
Norf asked me. Technically, they weren't doing that. They were attempting to bring people back to life, and this was as close as they got, I said.
It's not a horrible idea, they just fucked it up,
Carl chimed in. It says here they got a military contract with Iran just for the sake of funding the work they actually wanted to do. But ISIS heard about this shit and they had to go deeper underground, I said.
Maybe they fucked their shit up,
Norf said. Maybe, I replied.
So the UN sent us in this motherfucker to do what Iran was attempting to do and make zombie soldiers,
Norf said.
Okay, I'll deal with that shit later. All that matters now is getting the fuck out alive. And if I seen any of those movies, I think we better figure out really fucking fast how we catch what they got, or if you even can.
Hero typed in more shit on the computer and he said, they have to do some sort of electrotherapy. It even says that they can control them, or at the very least direct them. It also says these men are not mindless, just in a state of hyperaggression. Do you think that the scientists let some of them out to defend them from ISIS? I speculated.
Hey man, your idea is just as good as any shit we thought of. Let's destroy these computers and all the rest of this shit,
said Norf. It was at this point the UN mercs pushed back.
Hold on, think of how much money we could make if we sold this,
said Carl. Think of how much damage this could do if it gets into the wrong hands. You see what happens when these things ain't got shit better to do, said Norf. I could see both sides of this argument and absolutely understood why a mercenary would push for money.
We got incoming,
yelled Jacob from the steel metal door. Luke shut the blast doors that slid like a bank vault. Kezzy and I got the heads up from soldiers on our side. They had pincered us. Kezzy let the rifle go and fired shots down the hall, telling everyone they were coming better than any words might. I joined into the fray. The blast doors slowly began to open. I couldn't focus on that at the moment because undead soldiers were running at us with zero fucks to give. I heard Winston yelling to lower the blast doors, but someone, maybe Jacob, said someone was doing it from the other side. The vehicle barreled down the ramp from the back way, and I could hear the others pouring bullets into the thing. I had to look back when I heard return fire. These fuckers absolutely were shooting back, so it wasn't as if they couldn't shoot back. They had more than likely ran out of ammo. Unfortunately, this new squad hadn't. Me and Kezzy were steadily falling back. We got pressed so hard we had to move out of the doorway. I flipped over a desk and threw chairs at the problem. Sarge tore the unspent RPG cradled by the dead soldier and risked the consequences of firing it in a confined space. The missile sailed through the air and connected with the APC, and bodies tumbled out of the explosion with the force of a spit take.
Go! Disco! Kezzy! Come on!
Norf yelled to us. We ran out of bunker side, double tapping, even triple tapping some of the flaming soldiers that were still in good enough shape to be a problem. When Luke and Jacob passed the smoking husk of a vehicle, a limb shot out of the flames and swatted at them so hard it went through Luke's chest. Jacob attempted to raise his weapon, but before he could pull the trigger, the massive thing's left arm punched him in the face, crushing his skull into an unrecognizable mass of flesh. Those of us who lived shot into the thing. It was 7 feet tall and affixed with body armor, half Kevlar, half metal plates. Its face was contorted into an undefined rage that defied logic.
Slip around him,
yelled Norf to all of us. The sergeant was nearly as big as the behemoth, but I doubt he could have been as strong even on his best day. We had a wide berth now that the ramp was relatively clear. It may have been a 2-block incline up the ramp, but we could clearly see daylight through the haze of smoke. The reinforcements from the other side were on our tail. It wasn't as if a few desks and chairs were an effective method of barricading unstoppable undead super soldiers. The huge tank-like creature that single-handedly ended 2 of our men threatened to snap at us like a bear snatching salmon that dared to swim upstream. Winston North's distraction was all that was keeping the big fucker off of us. He squared up with the beast that was one-shot killing us with a combat shovel. Every time he tried to turn to catch up to us, the massive soldier hopped in his way, slowing him. With the swelling mob growing, he stopped trying to run. I stopped when I saw he did, dangerously shooting around the sergeant at undead fucks that jumped up to get beat down. "Go! Get the fuck out of here, Disco!" he yelled back to me. I remember it was the hardest thing I had done in my life until that point. Winston knew he wasn't making it out of there alive. He was holding the big fuck at bay, giving us time to regroup, and if we didn't use that time to escape, he basically would have died for nothing. We kept moving, and we never saw Winston North again. We managed to get back to base after a long march through a hostile desert, but along the way back, we all made a pact to each other that if we ever, at any point in our lives, heard about tin, we'd drop everything to make sure it never grew. I must admit, I wasn't looking for tin to resurface whatsoever, and it was a promise I never thought would come to be. But here we are, 8 years later, civilians, battle-tested, but not battle-ready, gearing up to assault a flotilla. Carl and Hero weren't scared or nervous at all, because it was clear they hadn't fallen out of practice. But Kezzy and me were doing a poor job of looking the part of badass soldiers. Aside from being the co-host of a show that specialized in uncovering supernatural occurrences, I had barely picked up a gun. Clayface's boat glid smoothly on dark waters while we talked. He said that he'd been keeping an eye out for tin to resurface as a hobby and found them on a whim. He assured us that it wouldn't be much opposition there because they were prioritizing hiding their research from the world over protecting it with arms. It did track, seeing how the world reacted to knowing there was a way to potentially create unkillable soldiers. I always figured robots would be the first choice before zombies, but I guess it was all a matter of timing. Hero and Carl weren't fucking around this time. They were loading up explosives, hollow points, and shotguns. Though Clay said there would be little opposition, if any, they certainly weren't chancing it. Clayface himself had a few cases of explosives that he intended to detonate the facility with. I asked if that would be enough. These days everything was so backed up on the cloud somewhere, so even if we cripple them here, what was to say they wouldn't start back up in a few months? As much as I wanted to see this thing out, I didn't know if I'd be up for doing this in another 8 years. I couldn't put Harlii and the girls through it, and there was no guarantee I'd be in passable enough shape to get the job done. We looked through the schematics of the facility and Clay ran us through how he was going to bring it down. Clay, Kezzy, and I were going to place explosives at key locations, while Carl and Hero would burn down anything they were working on. Kezzy was shaking hard. I grabbed her hand to steady her, maybe to stop myself from shaking. Clay seemed to know what was going on, but that being said, he couldn't know everything. We all lowered our ski masks when the floating barge was in sight. I did my final weapons check, then checked Kezzy as she checked me. I hadn't really worked with Hero and Carl, so we didn't have the same level of trust as Kezzy and I. It was a clear night, and there were gentle blinking lights on the flotilla. I hadn't asked myself until we were about to breach, what would happen if there were civilians on the ship, non-monsters that were just lab nerds? Were all of them going down with the barge? Would they have time to get out? Before I got to ask the question, Carl and Hero were off to enter the heart of the complex. Me and Kezzy went our way to set the charges. Clay cut the power as was the plan. Kezzy and I heard gunfire in the distance. "Are you there? What's your situation?" I said to Carl. There was only the metallic rattle of bullets over a comm that went dead. "I'm going in," I said. Kezzy shook her head and grabbed my arm. "Don't." She spoke with utter sincerity. In that one word she conveyed more to me than 100. We weren't soldiers anymore. We weren't killers anymore. We had lives that didn't revolve around death. As much as we wanted to end it, this wasn't our fight, and this was no longer the way we chose to fight. I nodded in agreement, knowing what she knew in a word. "Fall back, I'll head them off," I said over calm, but to Kezzy as well, so that she knew I wasn't going in, but I couldn't leave them completely. I didn't see Carl, but I saw Hero retreating backwards, and the power kicked back on.
We're live!
Yelled Clay over the comms as if he were ready to blow the place. Hero fired backwards. I saw a hulking mass of flesh trailing behind him. In armor, some Kevlar, some metal plates, was Sergeant Winston, clear as day. He was cobbled together like some sort of Frankenstein monster. He fired at Hero with 2 assault rifles in both hands. I nearly cried. For 8 years, Sarge was under these fuckers' boots, working as a mindless puppet. I opened fire. I'm not a praying man, but I prayed that day that I could bring him down for good, so he wouldn't have to live like that. The flotilla began exploding. "Clay, we're still here!" I screamed over comms, but I got no reply. "Go!" I yelled to Kezzy, who was already very close to the edge, but standing close to live charges. She hopped off the barge seconds before the explosion happened, or at least I hope she did. The entire barge lurched. Hero, me, and even Sergeant North slid down rapidly, descending to a dramatic drop. As we slid, Winston grabbed me with hands big as oven mitts. Hero held his shotgun shot because I was too close. Familiar monster grabbed me by the arm and nearly pulled it out of the socket. Instead of reaching for my pistol, I reached for my ski mask and pulled it off. When Winston wrapped his hand around my neck, we locked eyes, and for a moment, I knew he knew. "This go," he mumbled, as if he hadn't spoken in so long he was remembering how. His grip loosened. He looked me in the eye and did the slightest of nods, as if he knew what had to happen. I shot him in the head 5, maybe 6 times, until his lights went out. We splashed into the water. The fire took the barge completely. Sergeant Winston drifted into the dark waters, protecting us even still, and defying orders once again to do it. It was a good thing we were already in the water, or else everyone would have seen me crying. Kezzy pulled the boat around and fished me and Hero out of the water to the backdrop of the burning barge. Clay was nowhere to be found. "Carl?" I asked Hero. Hero shook his head in the negative, telling us without saying he didn't make it. "Where's Clay? He hit it too early, that son of a bitch!" I yelled. Kezzy brought us into the cockpit and pointed to a huge bag with a note on top. Kezzy read it out loud. "If you're reading this, I died, and I hope to shit we got them. I left money inside for whoever is left." Hero didn't hesitate. He went to open the big bag. I had an awful thought all of a sudden and grabbed his hand. "Wait, give me your knife," I said to Hero, knowing he had one. I slowly and carefully cut a hole in the bottom of it. To my surprise, the bag was loaded with enough explosives to take us out, the boat, and a block and a half. "That son of a bitch," said Hero. "Why would he do that? Why would he?" Kezzy said. I shook my head, having absolutely no clue. On the way back to shore, we all made speculations without proof of why Clay would think we'd need to die. And without any actual evidence, the most we could figure was that he was going to pin it on us, or he was getting the plans for himself. We couldn't know, and may never, unless we had the displeasure of ever seeing him again. Hero was hell-bent on tracking Clay down and giving him the same end that Carl got, while me and Kezzy decided it was best to go back to our civilian lives and never play soldier again. On my way back home, I wondered why I didn't open that bag, and I thought a rumor telling me that a bag was death. I had a lot to think about, decompressing from the excitement of laughing at death. Maybe we should train the girls to shoot. I loves me a tale of death and destruction. Zombie soldier types and Frankensteins and shit. Oh, Lord. I tell you, these are my type of romance stories. I ball up by the fire with my Snuggie and Chardonnay to get the most out of them. Gravedigger Queen is signing out from her bone pile. Night, children.